Hello guys, Giuseppe Caiazzo here from talentsandothersounds.com. Today I'm really excited because I'm going to share with you our new release. It's a cinematic futuristic sound library called Transfer. We are really proud of this library, which includes a wide range of cinematic sounds from impacts and blasts to risers and tension builders, dark scene tones, transitions, whoosh, robotic stutters, morphs, atmospheres and much other. Transfer comes with two different editions, a Sound Pro edition and a Lite edition. So let me explain you the differences between the two. Transfer Sound Pro comes with 300 and more samples, plus 36 Kontakt instruments with a custom user interface to further process and manipulate the samples. The Lite edition features 200 samples and no Kontakt instruments. If you purchase the Transfer Sound Pro edition, you will also receive a discount coupon of 10% that you are entitled to apply on all our future releases. So, if you purchase Transfer Sound Pro, you will receive a separate mail with a custom code that you can use to everything that we are going to release in the future. So, before observing in detail the features and the control that we find on the interface of the Kontakt instruments, I'll play for you some of the sounds in order to give you an idea about what this library is about. So as you can hear, this library features a wide range of samples and cinematic sounds, from impacts and hits to risers, tension builders, and other category of stutters, of cinematic effects, morphs, etc. So the first thing that I would like to do is to actually give you an explanation of how the sounds are organized in the interface. First thing to look is the virtual keyboard, where we notice that there are three groups of samples that are highlighted with three different colors. In particular, there is a first group that goes from C1 to G1 that is highlighted in blue. Then we have a second group that goes from G1 sharp to D2 sharp that is highlighted in magenta. And then a final group that goes from E2 to C3 that is highlighted in yellow. And each one of these group of samples can be independently controlled by each one of these columns of controls. And it's really easy to understand what column corresponds to the group of samples, because you see that this first column here is highlighted in blue, exactly like the samples here. So all the control that we find in this column only control and affect this group of samples and not the other ones. Same thing goes also for second column that controls the magenta samples, and finally the same is for the third column corresponding to layer 3 highlighted in yellow that controls this group of samples highlighted in yellow as well. So let's have a closer look to the control that we have in each one of these columns. Well, here on the top of the interface we find a pitch knob, then we have a drive, a controller of a distortion effect. Then we have a low pass filter, and then here in the bottom of the interface we find a filter LFO. The LFO has independent control for each of the columns as well. In particular, the filter LFO features a knob that controls the rate, which is synced to the master tempo, and so ranges from 8 to 64. And this other knob controls the amount of the LFO. Clearly the other two columns feature exactly the same controls. Then we have a master section for the effects. Well, we find that of course affects all the samples regardless of the group, of the layer to which they belong. And for the delay, we have control on the rate, that is synced to the master tempo as well, and ranging again from 64 to 8. And this knob that controls the feedback. Then we have this cursor here that controls the amount of the effect, so the amount of the wet, okay, of the effect that we apply on the samples. Then we have a reverb, on which we have control on the sides. It's controlled by this knob, and the damping, that is controlled by this other knob, and again a cursor to control the amount of the effect. So let's have a look about how we can use this control to obtain some new sounds out from the original ones. So the ones that I played before, you see that are without further processing, because all the pitch are set to 0, there is no drive, no distortion, the filter is set to the maximum, and all the knobs that regulate the amount are 0. And same thing also for the master effects. So as you probably have noticed, for this preset that is labeled as Future Cinematic, the first group, represented by the blue samples, is composed mostly by impact effects, so hits, explosion-like effect, let's say. Instead, the second group is mostly composed by long transition, riser effects and tension builders, and then other kind of transition are in the final group, in the yellow group. So let's assume that we want to create some darker effect for the impact. So the most straightforward thing that it will do is to pitch down the samples, then maybe close the filter a little bit, add in some distortion. Let's add also a little bit of reverb. So let's increase the value of this cursor. Let's increase the size of the reverb as well, and let's decrease the damping. And we obtain, well, let's decrease the pitch another bit, 10, it's okay. We have something like this. So in this way we could obtain some way more darker atmospheric sounds. And let's see now what kind of a control we can apply to the second layer. As the samples in this layer are pretty long, we can apply some LFO to add some rhythm to the transitions. Let's increase the pitch a bit. So as you can hear, by playing with the rate of the LFO, we can obtain this sort of drunk rhythm effect that works really well when you work with cinematic sounds, because when you have these long samples, basically they are mostly used for creating a feeling of weight, a feeling of anxiety, and adding these stutters, this LFO that continuously changes its rate, noticeably increases this effect. A thing that I forgot to say is that this is in regard to the pitch knobs for each of the groups. Of course, you can control them by moving with a step of 1 semitone, but if you want to have a higher resolution for the knob and want to perform a finer adjustment of the pitch, you can hold Shift and move the knob, and you see that the step now becomes 0.1 semitone. So in case you want to have a more accurate control on the pitch. And so, as you can have independent controls on each one of these groups of samples, you can obtain something that is pretty new and pretty customized, and you can obtain your own samples starting from the original ones. For example, one thing that you can do is to map part of these knobs to the real knobs of a controller, and record yourself while you play the samples and play with the parameters as well. So in order, this can help you to obtain a huge variety of sounds, and then you can select the best one and use them as you prefer. So as I said, the samples are organized in this way: hits, risers, and transition for this preset that is labeled as a future cinematic dry, because there is no further processing applied. And actually the first 10 presets that you will find in transfer are labeled in this way. So they go to further cinematic 1, 2, up to 10. However, this organization of the samples, I mean hit, riser, and transition, is not always the same for all the presets, like I'll show you by playing some other preset. For example, if we pass to this one that is called obscure booms, yeah, I'll play this one first. Well, essentially, this preset is based on using some of the hits and the impacts of the original samples and turning them with a darker feel. So we have something like this. So as you can notice, in the final layer, the third layer of the samples, we have this long transition. And you already find them with the LFO applied, that creates this sort of high tension rhythm that underlies the kind of feeling that I was describing before of weight and anxiety. I'll also play another one. It's called Obscure Booms 02, that is based more or less on the same concept. So I'll show you a little bit of the preset. Actually, it's a 36 Kontakt instrument, so it will take too much to dig deep in each one of them. But I think that by showing these ones, it can help you to have a clear vision of the original sounds that you find in transfer, and also the kind of sound that you can obtain by using the interface. The next preset that I would like to show you is called robotic risers. Well, here you won't find the organization as we have seen with the first preset of hits, transitions, and hits, risers, and transitions. But all the samples that are in the groups are pretty long, so are transition kind of sounds. And they have been obtained by reversing, part of them has been obtained by reversing the impacts, which are quite long. So by reversing them, the tail of the impact becomes the main body of the riser. And here with this preset you can fully appreciate the kind of let's say rhythmic stutter, and how can they improve, let's say, your production by playing each against the other with different setting of the LFO. Find a lot of these sort of high-tech stutters in transfer. Yeah, another preset that I would like to show you is called pitch rise. That is another typical kind of cinematic effect that is used to create tension. Basically, the sounds in this preset have been created by applying to the original samples an envelope on the pitch. So the effect that you have is something like this. And probably you have noticed that when I keep the key pressed, we have this effect of rising pitch. But as soon as I lift the key, the pitch drops down. This is intentional, and because it's very useful in this cinematic realm to create this rise and fall effect. Actually, the sound during the pitch rising part creates this feeling of weight and tension. And when it's released, the pitch drops down. That creates this feeling of release, which is a sort of, let's say, putting this feeling of anxiety and anxiety relax put against each other. Very frequent and very powerful in the context of cinematic production. Okay, that creates something, feeling of something that is happening really fast. Then another preset that I would like to show you is this one, vocal atmospheres. Basically, the original samples that have been used to create this preset are in one of the 7 folders in transfer. I forgot to say that all the samples are organized in 7 different folders. And of course, it's high definition audio at 96K or 24-bit. And in this folder, you will find these very long audio files, up to 1 minute or even more, which are meant as scene setting sounds, as beds. And the name, the reason because they are called, why they are called the vocal atmospheres, because most of them have been created by spectral processing some vocal samples, most of my own voice. So I'll play some for you. So you see that you can combine these layers by putting them on the top of each other to create something more interesting, more intricate. And of course, these sounds, being very long, they are very versatile because, as you've probably heard, you can apply LFOs. There is a number of things that you can do with that and get every time different sounds. So these first 6 presets, I think, that I show you are only a small part of the of all the instruments that you will find in transfer. Some of them are more heterogeneous, like the first one that I played, that includes several categories of sounds, from the more aggressive ones to the more transition effects, to some others that are more atmospheric. Other presets are more focused on one specific kind of sounds. For example, transition, like I've showed you. Other ones are more focused on hits. So I will play for you another preset that is, for example, this one. This one, all the sounds are impact sounds. Again, they are divided in 3 groups, but you will only find aggressive sounds. also have a folder, yeah, this one, low tones, and these are pretty similar to the ones that I played right now, but they are darker, more synthetic, and more distortion oriented. And also in this case, you can control them individually to come up with something different. For example, don't be afraid to test extreme values, for example, for the pitch shift. You will always come up with something that is usable. Yeah, here you can see that an impact sound with a pitch shift adding some LFO can turn in something more atmospheric and more undefinable, I would say. So guys, this has been a very quick walkthrough in all the Kontakt instruments that you will find in Transfer. It's a quite heterogeneous library, as you had an opportunity to see. And so, few other information. First one is a troubleshooting information. All the Kontakt instruments that you see here have been saved with a relative path mode. That means that regardless of the machine, of the computer to which the library is migrated, Kontakt is always able to see the path without having problems. However, sometimes it happens that Kontakt is not able to recognize the path and you have a sample missing message. That's something that Kontakt user might be unfortunately familiar with, because it happens quite frequently. But in the unlikely case that this happened to you, don't panic, because it's a pretty easy fix. And in the folder of the library that you will download, you will find a separate PDF file that explains you how to perform batch resay, which is actually a pretty straightforward way and the easy thing to do that allow you to permanently solve the problem. Okay, as I said, it's real likely, but in case it happens to you, we got you covered. A very final thing is this one. Probably many of you that are watching this video right now already subscribed to our mailing list, and if you are, you know that you receive each month some monthly free buys. That is a thing that we do for all our subscribers. Each month we send a set of free samples, royalty-free samples that you can use as you want. So if you are not on our mailing list, now you know. And so join us. You will also be able to download another release, which is our first release, that is called Relict. That is a free horror sample library. So a lot of good things that you will get if you join to our mailing list. And all these free buys, you will receive them regardless if you then purchase, transfer, and all the other releases or not. So guys, I think that's all. I hope that you have enjoyed the video. I hope that you have liked the sound. And so, thanks for watching, and see you next time. Bye.